And I was a guy who had Kentucky in my survivor pool a couple of times last night because I just thought maybe there could be a hiccup down the road. Let's just use Kentucky for that sure victory, Aaron. Move them on to the round of 32, and then we'll sweat it out later. Au contraire, mon frere. And after Kentucky lost to Oakland last night, 80-76, all hell broke loose. I can imagine that it's times 100 in Lexington, as this is not the standard for Kentucky basketball. But I'm just going to come out and say this. If you think that John Calipari should be fired, you're an idiot. There's no reason for John Calipari to be fired after what happened last night in the NCAA tournament. There may be reasons why things aren't as great as they are in Kentucky again, or as they once were. But right now, Aaron Torres, now is not the time to get rid of John Calipari.
Well, there's a lot of layers. Fired.
Let's unpeel that onion then.
Well, I was going to say, fired's an interesting word because he would be owed $33 million.
So not going to happen.
That's what I was going to say.
Yep.
We've never seen that. We've seen it in football. And one thing about buyouts, as we learned with Jimbo Fisher, it's not one check that has to be written today to get rid of somebody. But I'll also give you I'll toss it back to you. If you're John Calipari and, we went through St. Peter's. You and I were on the day after St. Peter's 2 years ago. I remember because we were talking about it, and then Deshaun Watson got traded to Cleveland. But that's neither here nor there, okay? But we were on after that game, and we had probably a less tempered, less serious conversation on that day. But I guess my question is, the word fired is correct. I don't think he's going to be fired. But if you're John Calipari, you're in your 60s, you have probably $100 million in the bank right now. You're now part of, and listen, because I'm a guy that criticizes Matt Painter, you're part of the two worst NCAA tournament losses in one of the most successful programs in college basketball history. Over a 3-year stretch, you have the two worst NCAA tournament losses. I guess my question isn't about being fired. It's about, do you want to come back to a place where you know that everybody hates your guts, everybody's mad, and there's nothing you can do to change anybody's opinion for another 12 months until March of 2025?
Let's hear from John Calipari and what he said last night after the loss. There's two bits of information here, and I want to break them up. First part, here's Cal after the 4-point loss to Oakland last night, 80-76.
We made some critical mistakes at critical times again today. I mean, we had our chances. As good as they played and as many shots as they made, we still had our chances, and both on defense and offense. And when you have a really young team and you look at where did the mistakes come from, they were freshmen.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, because I will piggyback off of what you say. I don't know if we'll agree, but
what were the critical mistakes? Because what I saw was a team that came out that looked completely unprepared for that zone that Oakland exclusively runs. One of the worst offensive performances of the season. Reed Sheppard, who people are talking about as a legitimate top 5 pick, finishes with 3 points on 1 of 5 shooting. He looks lost. Rob Dillingham has maybe his worst game. I think he finished with 9 points. And so that doesn't all fall on Cal, but this wasn't one where there were 27 turnovers and it looked like a team that was unprepared. And oh, by the way, the other thing, and I know you have a lot of thoughts, so I want to get over to you, but lack of preparation and then lack of urgency. Oakland out-rebounded Kentucky. It seemed like every loose ball went to Oakland. So I don't see the crucial mistakes that were made. I see a team that was unprepared, not ready to go. Floor is yours.
Bad pass by Reed Sheppard on an alley-oop, a missed dunk,
Sure.
Sheppard not getting involved. You talk about a bigger picture. DJ Wagner, second half of the season, completely MIA. Like there are issues with Kentucky, and maybe some of that falls on Cal. But Jack Golke hit 10 freaking threes last night. The three that actually broke the back of the University of Kentucky Wildcats didn't even come from Golke. DQ Cole buries one from the corner in a 1-point game to seal the deal. It was I don't want to say it was a prayer, Aaron, but that shot goes in maybe 2 out of 10 times, and where he was and being pressured, Cole was 3 for 3 from behind the arc last night. Oakland at 15 threes at a 50% clip, just shy of 50%. That's tough to beat in the NCAA tournament. And this leads me to the point of the second clip. And I think this is what is most important when you talk about the big picture of John Calipari. This is what John Calipari also said after last night, and it is laying the foundation for change in Lexington.
I'll look at other ways that we can do stuff, but this thing here, it's a different animal. We've been able to help so many kids and win so many games and Final Fours, national titles, and all this stuff, win league championships with young guys. It's changed on us. It's all of a sudden it's gotten really old. So we're playing teams that our average age is 19, their average age is 24 and 25. So do I change because of that? Maybe add a couple older guys to supplement.
And that's the groundwork. I don't think Oakland was 24 and 25, but there are some veteran players. Jack Golke, a guy who spent a lot of time in Division II, and he's now the name of the tournament. Doug had talked about a lot over the last couple of weeks is there are now guys who just make their name on these 2 days, and Jack Golke now is in that NCAA tournament lore for what he ended up doing last night. But I think this is where Calipari is now alluding to. Maybe they don't get the top recruiting class in the country or get the 5-star prospects. Maybe it's time for them in the portal and NIL to end up putting together their team, because it was just, a week or two ago that there's news out of Lexington that there's going to be a big collective that they're trying to put together. This is Cal, I think, saying that the changing ways of Kentucky are about to begin because of maybe the frustrations of relying on an 18 and 19-year-old. And you know who was the most consistent Kentucky Wildcat, not only last night, but probably all season? And you watch this team more than I do.
Antonio Reeves. Yeah.
And he was a transfer, right?
Yep.
And so like it is there. And for everybody that said that John Calipari is the one that needs to go, I can understand the frustration. Again, Oakland hit 15 threes last night, and Kentucky was basically in a possession of still trying to win the game. And what guy, when everybody is leaving the game, who would be most suited for the NIL transfer portal game than John Calipari? Now, it's a question on whether you have the energy anymore, which is forced some guys to leave and not want to deal with it. But I think Cal is the perfect guy for this sort of job and for this transformation. You bring in somebody new, Aaron, your collective and your other boosters walk all over this guy. He's the guy that, with the cachet, you can figure out if you got to make a change on a staff here or whatever, or make your roster adjustments with NIL, but Cal's got to be the guy to stay for Kentucky.
Well, I think that's part of the problem is he's made every change. I know what the soundbite said, but they went transfer heavy 3 years ago when they brought in Oscar Shibwe and all those guys 3-4 years ago, and it didn't work. Then they went back to the freshman stuff this year. I'll be honest, I know the freshmen didn't play well last night. I don't have as much of a problem with the freshman stuff because, they finished second in the SEC, as we talked about yesterday. I'm with you. I think the SEC is at worst, and don't go by the tournament win-loss record, okay? It's all about matchups. It's all about one game at a time. I think the SEC was probably the second best league in college basketball behind the Big 12. Well, as Kentucky finished second in that league, and so I don't have as much problem with the freshmen as I just don't know how you don't come out ready to play, especially, by the way, after you lost the opener in the SEC tournament. And I think that's where the frustration of Kentucky fans comes in, is that for years, John Calipari said, listen, it's going to be a process. We got young guys, but wait till March. And this felt like, okay, this might be one of those years. They closed the regular season with a win at Tennessee. They're they finished second in the SEC. They get the double bye to Friday night at the SEC tournament. Everything's going good. And then it's one and done in the SEC tournament, one and done in the NCAA tournament. And obviously this is a continuation of a program that we've had 4 NCAA tournaments since the 2021 was canceled because of COVID. 1 NCAA tournament win over the last 4 NCAA tournaments. That's just unacceptable at the University of Kentucky.
Kentucky's a job that anybody would want. In terms of if it was available, you take the Kentucky job. I just think when you look at all the options, that Cal is still the best option. And it may sound like I'm making excuses for them, but again, Oakland hit 15 threes last. Those are shots that still have to be made. And I know you're talking about how they didn't defend. Double-digit threes in a tournament very rarely, as we saw the graphic, one shy of tying the all-time record for a player in a game. You miss two of those. Maybe he hits 8 of them. You end up winning. Again, an alley-oop here. And there were times like throughout the season, like you're right, but there were also times where Reed Shepherd saved the day.
100%.
You know, in coming through where other guys weren't carrying as much of the load. I think he understands the changing point of college basketball. Just like when Coach K, it was never about the one and done, and then they all of a sudden alter, and what do you know? Duke's ended up being a one and done school for a while.
I will say, the freshman to me isn't the problem. As a matter of fact, I think he was proven right on the freshman this year. The freshman carried them to wins at Auburn. Freshman carried them to wins at Tennessee. So the freshman isn't the problem. The problem is it's just it just they didn't look ready to go. Dan, and I know, we might have to come back and talk about this on the other side. I know we got Mark Dominic, but would you agree? Tell me, and I want your opinion. You can say no, and I don't know how closely you were able to watch the beat. They came out, I felt like a complete lack of urgency in that game. And by the way, the point that you made about if Oakland ends up shooting 12 of 31, which is still, I'm not great at math, but that's that's like 35, 36%, Kentucky wins this game. And, I just sit there and I do say, like, you look at this stuff with Calipari, how razor thin things are. You win that game, you're playing NC State to go to the Sweet 16. St. Peter's that year, you win that game, you're playing Murray State, I believe was the team that St. Peter's played to go to the Sweet 16. But you don't win those games. You do give up 15 to 31, and at some point it just does become a trend.